So I'm Suma Manohar from the sunny Singapore. It's 5 p.m. on a Saturday here, and I'm part of Microsoft Azure's GBB team for data and AI for cloud scale analytics. There's the LinkedIn handle that I have given there if you would like to connect with me for further discussions after the session. Today, I have about 45 minutes to talk about data modernization journey for customers who would like to embark on cloud with data residency restrictions. So if you have questions, please feel free to put it on chat, and at the end of the session, I'll try and answer all of them. Right, let's get going. So the agenda for today is that I will talk about a generic customer who wants to go on a cloud journey but have data residency restriction, assuming they are from an industry who is highly regulated and hence they have restrictions and resistance internally and externally. So we'll talk about how we can go about the process orientation to the customer, technology orientation to the customer, and how we can provide some solution pathways using Synapse analytics. So what are some of the customer requirements that we are talking to? Let's assume that it's a large global financial institute who operates in about 50 countries across the globe. And they have on-prem siloed data on multiple data warehouses as we speak, and they have different data warehouses to cater to their different data needs. Now, the requirement that they have put forward is that they would like to unify the data across data warehouses into one model, which caters to all the countries irrespective of the data regulatory restrictions. Now, there is an internal resistance to this move from the data owners because they will face the flag from the regulatory teams within the company, because they are the ones who will have to be answerable to the auditors. So with that in mind, what are some of the requirements that the customer put forth is that cloud acceptability across these 50 countries may vary. It could be centralized in the sense there may not be any data residency restriction. There may be restriction based on whether the data can go out of the country, can stay within the country, and some countries have a no for going on cloud. But we need to address the requirements for all of these different countries. So starting with this requirement, I will go through each of the requirement one by one and show you how we addressed these requirements using Synapse Analytics or even Azure Data Services for that matter. So because it is already having three different categories, which is like may have data residency restrictions, may not have restrictions, or they are not ready to move to cloud, we may have to come up with a strategy with multi-region data centers. Now, what that means is that first we sat down with the customer and understood how many of their countries really have data residency restrictions, and out of 50, 41 countries are not having restrictions. So we did this country grouping per their cloud acceptability. So let's call no data residency restriction countries as Group A countries. And similarly, Group B are the countries who have data residency restriction, which means they can't move out of their country in terms of their customer data or PII data, but they can go to cloud within the country. For example, countries like India, Indonesia, I put it as star because Azure Data Center is about to be there in Indonesia, Jakarta soon. So that is Group B. Then Group C are the countries where they have data residency restriction, which means they can't send their data out of the country. And unfortunately, there may not be an Azure cloud data center in that country. For example, Turkey or Mozambique. Right, so they will have to continue to be on-prem until they are okay to send the data to either Group A or Group B set of countries. So this is the high-level grouping. with this, if you see there are different storages and processing units, what are those can be discussed further during the course. Now, the other requirement that they mentioned is that, as I had mentioned, that they have different data warehouses in silos catering to their different data needs. Now they decided to have everything on one place so that they can just model it once and use it many times. So what is the solution path that we came up with for the unified data model, wherein we can logically model the data once and physically implement it in multiple data centers multiple times. So that's what we were visualizing in terms of unified data model, where the logical data model remains same and physically it will get implemented across different data centers across group A, B, and C. Now, it may sound daunting, but the advantages that it brings to the table is that, of course, this is indicative approach or the solution that we suggested, and it was received positively because it helps in creating the logical model once and the physical model multiple times based on the data types and the needs and the business units that may or may not be there in a particular country. Now, depending on the data centers and the countries of the data that we have put in, there could be multiple data owners. Ideally, it would be good to have one data management team and one data governance team, but multiple data owners, as Aditi was speaking in previous session. It's loosely based on data mesh concept, not tightly based, but loosely kind of. So that's one thing. And how do we address from the technical standpoint is that we can use Lakehouse database templates. Now, what are these Lakehouse database templates? In short, they are pre-built database models based on the industry experience that was gained by working with several industries by a company called ADRM, which was acquired by Microsoft Azure. And there are about 18 different industry-specific data models that are readily available, and you can just go and deploy these by few clicks, and you are good to go in terms of the readiness of data model. And this is going to help you to accelerate the time to value. So this is something that we proposed to the customer, and they were happy to explore this further. Now, coming to the next requirement that they suggested is that the solution should be such that it supports in-country data requirements and group reporting requirements. In the sense, the solution should be able to cater to anything that the in-country data team would have to do their country reporting, and it should also cater to reporting which would involve bringing of data across different countries. Now, how do we go about addressing that? And before that, what are such requirements wherein there is a need to bring different countries' data together? Like, what is the need for data unification? So some of the examples that I could think of is when somebody wants to do a 360-degree analysis, depending on their industry, it may be product, it may be customer 360-degree analysis, it may be an event around which they want to analyze as to why this happened, or during this event, what are the other attributes that got impacted. Also, they could want to do institute-wide P&L calculation. So for that, they'll have to bring the entire 50 countries data together. There could be interactions between two countries, depending on the nature of the industry that you're talking about, which may need to be tracked. So what I thought of doing is, so we have group ABC. Now I am going to introduce an additional partition in group A data center called group reporting, where I will use this space to bring data from all three groups, group A, B, and C, and do the data unification separately in this area. So this kind of separates the data ownership and the accountability of data as well. So this is, of course, this is logical. Now, how do we go about making this a possibility in reality? So before we go into the technology part of it, we had to address the processes that will go in the customer internal customer teams, right? They will have to kind of have a structured process to make sure that the data movement across regions happen in a managed and a governed way. Now, there are so many teams that might already be there within a company, like there must be a group data owner, country data owner, there might be a change management team, data governance team, code management team, and so on and so forth. So even though they are moving from on-prem to cloud, none of these key teams and roles have to become obsolete. They may be slightly changed, like the roles may be slightly changed to just look at the cloud data management instead of on-prem data management, and there may not be a drastic difference between the two. Now, it is a very indicative way of how we went about coaching the customer about data management and change management and governance when there is data movement across borders. Right. So there are steps wherein there is a team that requests for the data product because, of course, a country's data with a data owner, I'm just calling it as data product, and the data owner has to kind of approve or reject the request that a group reporting team is making for a particular set of data that they need for their data unification. Now, then there are several other teams involved in between to liaise with the group reporting team and the data owner, such as data governance team, change management team, or code management team. So if you look at it, it kind of reminds us of a workflow wherein there is an automated way in which we can deal with all these 5 steps, and how we can do that using Synapse. I'm going to talk to you about it in a minute. So essentially, there is a process which can be laid out based on which people or the teams can request and access the data which belongs to the countries that they may not be having it on Group A. Now, on the right top corner, you may see some keywords that I used which might remind you loosely of data mesh concepts again. And workflow is something that is very important in all of this, which helps in automating the process for data request. Now, how do we do that in Synapse? So obviously you must have already seen this ecosystem of Synapse Analytics. And if you see at the bottom corner, there is Microsoft Purview, which can help in terms of defining the workflows, defining the data owners or data stewards, and you can also manage your data request approval automatically using the workflows. I'm sure there are some sessions in Cool Runnings wherein this will be spoken about. Even Kim during her keynote spoke about it. So this is one of the very essential features of the data services that can be used to address the process requirement that they have. Now, last but not the least, I have gathered these 3 requirements together, and I think I'll need the next half an hour to talk about it. Essentially, what these 3 requirements talk about is how the data movement will happen on Synapse, whether it is bulk movement of data, whether it is cached movement of data, whether it can stay in other country temporarily or permanently, how it will be accessed, whether it will be interactively accessed on the fly, or is it going to be accessed in bulk. So these are the requirements that will be addressed in the next few minutes. So if you look at group A, B, and C, we have inter-region, intra-region, cloud to cloud, on-prem to cloud interaction. So we will have to address all these different permutations and combinations of data movement with Synapse. So before addressing these different scenarios, what I thought of is to segregate what is a problem area or uh, not problem area, mostly like a difficult area to address than something that is simple and it's already been done all over. So data movement or data access, I've separated it as bulk mode and cache mode. Bulk mode is usually when you can physically move the data over from a different country data center to the central group reporting area. That is probably because the data is not having any PII data or the data that is not restricted by the regulators, or even for that matter, it could be aggregated and hence there is no restriction. So that is bulk mode, and hence I've put that in green, which is like green zone, no problem zone. Caching mode or lightweight data access is where data is not physically allowed to go from one country to another zone, but it goes with a caveat that data caching is allowed, in the sense data from another country can be cached in group reporting area, and it is expected to be lightweight. It may not be like terabytes of data or petabytes or even gigabytes of data. So how do we go about it? So you saw this picture earlier. So now what we are talking about is data movement from group B to group A. So similarly, we have to do group A to group reporting and group B to group reporting. So this is where I'm getting all the data so that I can unify my data for group reporting. If it is individual country reporting, there is no problem at all. So individual country users can log into their respective data centers and do all that they are supposed to do without any restriction. So for example, if there is an India data user who wants to access India data, they can just log into India data center and or do all the processing without any restriction. It's only when they want to combine India data with, say, Singapore data. So Singapore data is in group A and India data is in group B. If I want to do some aggregation across these two countries, I would want to bring that into a separate environment. So this is the problem statement that I would like to address. Now, how do I go about it? There are many ways in which you can do. One of the ways, and using Synapse, this is how we had approached the customer, which they accepted. So you have group B with group B storage and group B's compute on Synapse Analytics. It could be dedicated pool, it could be serverless, or it could be any other compute that they would like. It could be even Spark, right? So this is independent. But when we want to move data from group B to group A, I'm having group reporting data separately and group reporting analytics, Synapse Analytics for compute separately. So I will bring in the data from group A, I will bring in the data from group B, I will do all the churning that I have to do, data churning that I have to do, and I may let the user access it on the fly there, or if I'm allowed by the regulators, I might even let this be stored on my group reporting storage after aggregation, probably, right? So this is very high level. So let me go into a bit more detail. So again, if you see, I have group B data center, wherein my data for group B is stored on a different storage. I am bringing that data onto group A. Compute. Of course, there needs to be an arrow from group A as well if you want to unify the data. And once the data is brought over using external table, you can either let the user directly access the external table if they are savvy in using Synapse Studio SQL, or you can create a Power BI direct query report on top, and they might want to use that via Power BI direct query mode. So two ways in which they can access in cached mode with data residency restriction is Synapse external table and Power BI direct query mode, depending on the skill set of the user. Now, going on to the next scenario, which is how do I move my data from group C, which is my on-prem system. For example, as I said, Turkey or Mozambique may not have data center, Azure data center as of now, and that data still needs to be on-prem. So how do I get that data onto the group reporting, storage, and compute to do my data unification? Now, you must have heard SQL Server 2022 is recently announced there. Not recently, it's about 6 months, 3-4 months, I guess, since the public preview. So Synapse, so if you have your data on-prem on SQL Server, and you can access that data using a feature called Synapse Link, which I think Kim mentioned during her keynote speech as well, wherein it's a very powerful service that has been introduced, wherein you can do an HTAP or access the data on SQL Server via Synapse link tables on Synapse Analytics. And again, those can also be accessed via Power BI by the user. So either you directly log into Synapse Studio, access the data via Synapse link tables, or you can log into Power BI, create a report on top of this, and then access this. So essentially, group C to group A also, the data can be accessed in this way. So this is just a technology blueprint of how under the hood it works. So overall, if you look at all the components that we spoke about, this is the Synapse, Azure Synapse Analytics, which is an overall view wherein we used several components in this analytical ecosystem like database templates to address the requirement that they had about unifying the data model. Then comes data warehouse or the data lake house and the data lake to address their physical implementation in terms of unifying the data on cloud. Then came Azure Purview, which is a data governance tool, enterprise data governance tool. It is not restricted to just Azure services, not just cloud services on Azure. It is also extendable to other cloud vendors like AWS S3 and Google Cloud as well, and onto the on-prem services like Teradata or SAP and Oracle, etc. And as we speak, they are building more and more connectors to make it a truly enterprise data governance tool. And data quality is also going to be upcoming. I think they have done a private preview of data quality from Purview. So these are few components. Then comes Azure Synapse Link and Azure SQL Server 2022 and Azure Synapse Link, which can be a conduit between Synapse and SQL Server on-prem, and the countries or the Group C countries who can't move from on-prem to cloud due to their restrictions will have to will still be able to access data via Synapse Link. And last but not the least, Power BI for visualization, wherein it's not just not only it's integrated with all other Azure data services tightly, it also is something that can help customers to not go into multiple services or vendors, but to deal with one and give that unified experience. Now, this is I'm sure everybody knows about Synapse Analytics as a whole, and this is one of the first unified cloud native platforms for converged analytics, where Synapse Studio gives you an unified experience, which is also used in all the group A, B, C approaches that I just defined. Now, I'm sure you will have a lot of questions, so I kind of rushed through the slides just to be able to see if you have any questions. If you don't have questions, probably I will go back and show some slides that I skipped, thinking that I might be running out of time. So let me see if I have any questions.